Okay, boys and girls, today we're going to graph a polar graph. We're going to start with problem 25. And what we notice, we have r is equal to 5. So the way we graph this is similar to the way you learn to graph equations in Math 1. In Math 1, you probably created what was called an XY table. Well, because we're in polar, we're going to create a theta r table. And what that means, theta is our independent variable, so we're going to choose values of theta and see how it affects r. So since we have this handy dandy unit circle, let's just use the angles that they gave us. So we're going to start with theta equals 0. So when theta is equal to 0, what would r equals 5 equal to? Well, since there's no sine or cosine, that would remain 5. So we have theta is 0 and r is 5. That would be on that point. So then the next one would be pi over 6. So once again, because there's no sine or cosine, r would remain 5. And we see that for pi over 3. We see that for pi over 2. So we can say this is a constant. The radius is a constant of 5. And it's going to look like this. So sketching is not my strong suit. So please forgive the way this circle will look when we're done. So there we go. So that is what that graph would look like. Okay, now let's do number 27. So once again, we're going to start with the theta r table. And we're going to choose values of theta based on what they've given us. We could also do, I might try doing some of the pi over 4s because it'll make it a little bit more tight. But we're going to start with when theta is 0. So when theta is 0, cosine of 0 is 1, so r would be 7. So this is theta is 0, r is 7. Our next one, let's just do pi over 6. Now, I know we have the unit circle, so I could use the unit circle to do this. But because I want more exact answers, I'm going to use my calculator. And I see when theta is pi over 6 using my calculator, I get that it's approximately 6.1. I know we need to go 3 places behind the decimal if this was the AP calculus test. But since this is just an estimate, I'm going to estimate, excuse me, pi over 6 at 6.1. When I do pi over 3, the cosine of pi over 3 is 1/2, so that'll be 7 times a half, which would be 3.5. So I'm going to go to pi over 3, and then I'm going to go to 3.5. 1, 2, 3.5. And then let's try pi over 2. So pi over 2, cosine is 0. So I go back to the pole. So that would be at 0 at pi over 2. Let's do, excuse me, 2 pi over 3. So 2 pi over 3 is negative 1/2. Excuse me. So that's going to make this negative 3.5. So how do I graph that? So normally I would have graphed it 1, 2, 3, 3.5, but since it's negative, it flips to the other side. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3.5 here. And then the next one would be 5 pi over 6. That will also be negative, and it's going to be negative approximately 6.1. So where I would normally graph it here, because it's negative, I will graph it 6.1 here. Okay, so what is this going to look like? Oh, and then let's do pi. And at pi, cosine is -1, so that's going to make it -7. So normally I would have graphed it here, but since it's -7, it goes back. And once we complete that graph, we can say that that's its period. So the period of this graph is 7. And it's going to look something like that. Okay? Graphing is not my strong suit. So if we were to graph this on your handy-dandy calculator, which you can do by going into polar mode, you can go in polar mode and type 7 cosine theta. I've done it on Desmos, and we see that, in fact, it is a circle. Because it's cosine, it's going to be symmetrical about the x-axis, and it has a radius of 3.5. Okay? So what I want you to do for homework, I want you to make theta R tables, and I want you to use, we're going to go from 0 to 2 pi. You can generally tell, well, let me go back and say that this has a period of pi because it took it pi units to get back to the origin. Most of them will have a period of 2 pi. So what I would like for you to do, I would like for you to graph 29, starting at 29, and then do every other odd. So that would be 29, 33, 37, 41, and 45. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions for homework. Okay? All right, so you want to do an R theta table and graph each of these. And of course, you can use your calculator. All right, I will see you tomorrow in class.